The diner had been around for decades, a small, cozy place with cracked red vinyl booths and an old jukebox that still played tunes from the 50s. It sat nestled at the edge of a sleepy town, the kind of place where the local residents all knew each other's names and where the coffee never stopped flowing. Rain pelted the windows, turning the street outside into a blurry haze. The steady tap-tap of the storm against the glass only made the diner feel warmer, like a refuge from the cold world outside. Inside, the staff moved around in a well-practiced rhythm. Linda, the owner, was at the counter, chatting with a few regulars while flipping pancakes on the griddle. Jake, the cook, hummed along to an old country song as he slid a plate of eggs to the window. Carla, the waitress, was refilling coffee mugs and laughing with a table of teenagers who came in every weekend after their high school football games. The sound of chatter, clinking dishes, and laughter filled the air, blending with the soft hum of the lights above. But amidst the bustle, there was one figure who went unnoticed. In the far corner booth, tucked away from view, sat an older man. His coat was worn, the kind you'd find at a thrift shop, and his hat was pulled low over his face. His eyes, though, glinted with a quiet intensity that seemed to hold a lifetime of untold stories. He didn't speak, didn't ask for anything, just sat there, staring out at the rain, a faint but visible sadness in his posture. The world moved around him, unaware as he waited quietly. He didn't seem to belong to the present moment. Something about him felt out of place, as if he were a visitor from another time. As the minutes ticked by, the man in the corner booth remained a silent figure in the background of the diner's lively hum. The staff, focused on the familiar faces that came and went, didn't notice him. Carla, the waitress, paused by the counter to chat with the group of teenagers, their laughter filling the air like an echo. She didn't glance his way, nor did anyone else. The man sat alone, his hands folded in his lap, the edges of his coat frayed with age. His eyes were tired, weary in a way that spoke of far more than just the long journey he must have traveled. But still he waited, patiently, almost resigned. His posture was rigid, as if his bones had long been accustomed to sitting in silence, yet there was a quiet sadness that emanated from him, a subtle weight that lingered in the air. A few of the regular customers, noticing him for the first time, glanced over briefly. But the moment their eyes met his, they quickly looked away, uncomfortable with whatever it was they saw. Perhaps it was his age, the roughness of his clothes, or maybe it was the way he seemed to carry a presence that demanded more than the usual polite nod of acknowledgement. No one approached. The teenagers, still at their table near the window, snickered among themselves. They whispered, pretending to be subtle, but their laughter was loud enough to make their mockery clear. One of them, a girl with a long braid, leaned in toward her friend and whispered something that made them all giggle. They glanced in the man's direction, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and judgment, but none of them moved to speak to him. Instead, they kept their distance, the momentary amusement of their teasing providing them a sense of superiority. The diner's chatter continued, unaware of the quiet storm in the corner. Linda, the owner, was busy chatting with an elderly couple at the counter, her back turned. No one came to offer the man a menu or even a simple glass of water. His presence was there, but it was as if he didn't belong to this place, as if the room had silently agreed to ignore him. And still he waited, his eyes never leaving the window, his patience unwavering, his sadness too deep to show. The sound of the teenagers' laughter, loud and mocking, finally reached Linda's ears as she wiped down the counter. She glanced up, expecting to see the usual mischief that came with their weekend visits, but instead, her eyes landed on the man in the corner booth. Her stomach tightened, the hair on the back of her neck standing up. There was something about him, something about the way he sat so still, so patient, despite the world moving on around him. Linda's gaze lingered on him for a moment, trying to place the feeling of unease that stirred within her. He was dressed simply, worn out even, yet there was a quiet dignity to him that didn't quite fit with the image of an ordinary diner customer. The man's eyes were distant, focused on the rain that streamed down the windows, but his posture was perfect. He sat up straight, his shoulders squared, as if he were ready for something. There was weariness in his face. Yes, lines carved deep into his skin, an old fatigue that seemed to have settled in his bones, but there was also a kind of strength in the way he held himself. For a brief moment, Linda felt as though she knew him, though she couldn't place how or why. There was a familiarity to him, something tugging at her memory, but it was elusive, like a dream she couldn't quite recall. Her eyes darted back to the teenagers, who were still whispering and laughing under their breath, clearly taking some sort of cruel amusement in his presence. Linda felt a flicker of anger, but it quickly faded into a deeper, more troubling concern. Something wasn't right. The man in the booth was different. He didn't belong in the background of this bustling diner, lost among the noise of chattering customers and clinking coffee mugs. She had been busy, running the diner with her usual routine, but now her attention was fixed on him. There was something about the way he held himself, the way his eyes never left the rain, as if he were waiting for something or someone. She couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that there was a story behind him, one that hadn't been told in a long time. And in that moment, Linda realized she couldn't just let him sit there, ignored by everyone else. With a deep breath, she pushed the thought of the laughing teenagers out of her mind, and decided she would go over herself. No more waiting, it was time to see if he needed something, or if he was something else entirely. Linda approached the corner booth slowly, her steps quiet against the diner's creaky floorboards. As she got closer, she could see him more clearly. The man's face was weathered, the lines of age and hardship etched deeply into his features. Yet, there was a calmness about him, a quiet dignity that seemed to radiate from the stillness of his posture. She stopped just a few feet away, and with a soft but firm voice, asked, "Excuse me, sir, has anyone taken your order yet? Can I get you something to drink?" The man turned his head toward her, and for the first time their eyes met. His gaze was steady, almost knowing, as though he had been waiting for this moment. His lips, worn thin, curled into a small, gentle smile. It wasn't one of joy or excitement, but of quiet acceptance. "No, ma'am," he said softly, his voice low but carrying a strength that surprised her. "I'm happy to wait." There was something about the way he spoke that tugged at her heart, a sense of patience, of having waited for much longer than anyone could understand. He didn't seem to mind the wait, didn't seem to expect much at all. And that, in itself, made Linda feel an unexpected rush of warmth. He wasn't demanding or impatient like many others who came through her diner. He was peaceful, almost too peaceful, given the way the world had a habit of rushing by. "Well, how about a cup of coffee while you wait?" she offered, already moving to grab a mug from the counter. He nodded, and she poured him a steaming cup, the rich aroma filling the air between them. She set the mug down in front of him, and slid into the booth across from him, the worn leather of the seat creaking under her weight. For a few moments, they sat in silence, the hum of the diner's activity fading into the background. Linda glanced out the window, watching the rain beat against the glass, before she spoke again. "It's coming down pretty hard out there," she remarked, her voice light and casual, trying to bridge the distance between them. "You getting out of town soon?" The man shook his head, his eyes distant for a moment, as if the question had caught him off guard. "I don't know," he said quietly. "Just passing through. Used to live here, a long time ago." Linda's heart skipped at the way he said it, the weight of the words hanging in the air between them. "Really? I don't think I've seen you around before." The man gave a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I left when I was young, came back to visit." His gaze flickered down to the worn jacket he wore, and that's when she saw it, a small faded patch on the sleeve. The insignia was old, but unmistakable, a military emblem, a symbol of service. Linda's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure why, but a chill ran through her as she studied the patch. The man noticed her gaze, and for a moment his smile faded. His hands wrapped gently around the coffee mug, his fingers slightly trembling. "Is there something wrong, ma'am?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost apologetic. Linda hesitated for a beat before replying, her heart heavy with something she couldn't explain. "No, nothing wrong at all," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize you'd been in the military." The man nodded, his eyes glancing away, like the mention of his past was something he had long buried. There was a quiet tension between them now, but it wasn't uncomfortable, rather it was full of unspoken understanding. "I served a long time ago," he said simply, his voice trailing off as he took another sip of his coffee. "A lot has changed since then." Linda's mind raced, but she stayed silent, giving him space. There was more to this man than she could ever know, but one thing was certain, he wasn't just any weary traveler passing through. As the man sipped his coffee, Linda's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of memory that clung to her like loose threads. There was something so familiar about him, the way he spoke, the quiet strength in his demeanor, the way he seemed to have carried a lifetime's worth of stories. But it wasn't just his presence that tugged at her, it was his words. He had mentioned a long time ago, a phrase that carried weight, and as he sat there in the corner booth, it suddenly clicked in her mind. Her heart skipped a beat. She had heard those words before, but never in a context like this. She remembered the stories her father had told her as a child, stories of a local hero, a soldier who had fought bravely in a war that had marked their town. His name had been passed down like a legend. Everyone knew the story. A young man, full of promise, who went off to war and became one of the most decorated soldiers in the country. But then something happened. There was a battle, a casualty report, and he was believed to have died. His funeral had been small but dignified, with the whole town attending to honor him. It was a tragic end to a young life, a loss that left the town with a hole in its heart, except, he was sitting right in front of her. Linda's breath caught in her throat, as she stared at him, the truth hitting her like a punch to the chest. The faded patch on his jacket, the military insignia, the way he spoke so humbly about his past. He wasn't just anyone. This was him. The soldier, the war hero, the man they had all thought was dead for so many years. The realization sent a wave of shock through her, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. Her mouth was dry, her mind spinning. The man, seemingly unaware of her internal turmoil, looked up from his coffee, his expression soft but weary. He gave her a gentle smile, and with a quiet voice he said, "Thank you for the coffee, it's been a long time since I've had a good cup." Linda's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the napkin dispenser, unable to form words. The man had been a hero, an icon in their town, and now here he was alive, sitting in her diner, as if nothing had changed, as if time had forgotten him. She opened her mouth to speak, but found herself speechless, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. Linda's mind raced as she tried to gather her thoughts, still reeling from the shock of realizing who the man in the corner booth was. She took a steadying breath, then quietly excused herself from the table. Her heart was heavy, but there was a sense of urgency now, a need to share this truth with the others. She walked to the back of the diner, her steps quick and purposeful. She gathered the staff, Jake, Carla, and even the young busboy Tim, in the small storage room. They looked at her, concerned by the look in her eyes. "Everyone listen to me," Linda said softly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "The man in the corner booth, he's not just some stranger passing through, he's our hero, he's Thomas Hale." A few seconds of stunned silence followed, and then Carla's face went pale, her hand instinctively clutching the edge of the counter. "Wait, Hale. As in, the soldier who died, that Hale." Linda nodded, her throat tightening. "He's alive. He's been alive all these years. We all thought he died, but he's sitting out there in our diner, like nothing ever happened." A wave of guilt washed over the room. Carla's eyes darted toward the front, her face flushed with shame. "But, we ignored him. We treated him like any other customer, like he was invisible." "Not just invisible," Jake added quietly, his voice filled with regret. "We let those kids laugh at him. We didn't even offer him a glass of water." The realization hit them all at once, the shame of their actions, the disrespect they'd shown to a man who had given everything for them. The air in the diner had shifted, the bustling noise from the kitchen, the chatter from the tables, all felt distant now. The weight of the truth settled over them, and with it came a profound sense of respect. The hero who had been forgotten, ignored, was now the very person they needed to honor. Linda's eyes softened, her voice almost a whisper. "We need to make this right." Linda returned to the front of the diner, her heart full of purpose. She walked straight to the man in the corner booth, who had finished his coffee, and was slowly pulling his coat tighter around him. The others had gathered behind her, and there was a quiet understanding between them. "Mr. Hale," Linda said softly, "we would be honored to have you as our guest today. Please, let us serve you a meal, anything you'd like, on the house." The man looked up at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but then he nodded, his lips curling into that same humble smile. "Thank you, ma'am," he said quietly. Linda nodded to Carla, who immediately went to the kitchen to prepare the meal. The atmosphere in the diner had changed, and the air was filled with a new energy. Word spread quickly, and before long, customers who had been oblivious to him earlier were coming over, offering thanks and shaking his hand. The teenagers, who had once laughed at him, now stood before him, heads bowed in apology. "We're sorry, sir," one of them said. "We didn't know." Tears glistened in Mr. Hale's eyes as he sat back, listening to the stories the customers shared with him, remembering the past together. Applause echoed through the diner, and the entire room felt like one, united in gratitude, redemption, and newfound respect. As the meal came to an end, Mr. Hale slowly stood, carefully adjusting his worn jacket. He gave Linda a soft, thankful smile. "I appreciate everything. You've made an old man feel like a king today," he said, his voice full of gratitude. Linda walked with him to the door, her heart still full from the emotional moment they'd shared. She couldn't help but ask, "Where are you headed now?" "Just passing through." He paused at the door, his eyes thoughtful for a moment. "Just passing through," he repeated quietly. Then with a gentle sigh, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn, faded photograph. He handed it to her, his hands trembling slightly. Linda took the photo, and as she looked down at it, her breath caught in her throat. It was a younger version of Mr. Hale, standing alongside her late father, both men in military uniforms, their faces full of youth and camaraderie. Her heart skipped. "I didn't realize," she began, her voice thick with emotion. He smiled softly, his eyes distant. "Your father and I served together. He was a good man." In that moment Linda realized this meeting wasn't by chance. It had been fate, a long overdue reunion that tied together past, present, and family, a gift she would treasure forever. Thank you for watching and experiencing this heartfelt story with us. The journey of the forgotten hero, the power of respect, and the beautiful way communities can come together really shows us the importance of understanding and kindness. Stories like these remind us that sometimes the most unexpected meetings can bring the most meaningful connections. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with others. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. What was the most surprising moment for you? And if you're new to the channel, subscribe so you never miss out on more stories that celebrate the power of human connection. Thanks again for being part of our community. Until next time, stay kind and keep believing in the power of stories.